Good evening and welcome to Elgin County's official plan public meeting. It is Tuesday, March the 26th, 2024, 5 p.m., and I will call this meeting to order. I will remind council present of any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. We will now move into section 6, reports of council, outside boards and staff, and 6.1. Presentation from Acting Manager of Planning, Elgin County Official Plan Public Meeting Presentation. Good evening, Paul. That's a lot of alliteration there.
Good evening, Mr. Warden and members of council. Thanks for having me this evening. With that, I will bring up and share my screen and bring up a slide deck that I will walk everyone through. Can people see my screen clearly? I'm going to go with yes. So once again, thank you, Mr. Warden. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump right into my presentation this evening, starting with a backgrounder on the official plan project and then walking council members and the public through the significant changes to the plan. And this is in order to make sure that we leave enough time, a sufficient time for anybody that would like to make oral submissions at this evening's meeting. With that, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the official plan project and the project's progress to date. And starting off with what is an official plan. And technically speaking, an official plan is a document that constitutes a municipality's statement of land use policy and is primarily composed of two parts: land use policies and maps that designate land for various uses such as agriculture, residential, or industrial uses. Councils across Ontario develop and implement official plans normally for three primary reasons. First is to develop a roadmap or blueprint for development and infrastructure that are to be planned across the municipality to ensure that land and resources are being used wisely and efficiently. The second is to make sure that councils have a consistent approach to decision-making on land use and not just one-off decisions or ad hoc decisions that may conflict with previous decisions. And the third reason is to make sure that best practices are employed in land development and resource management to help municipalities achieve a wide range of goals and objectives, including housing objectives, economic development objectives, and environmental objectives. So why are official plans important? Well, they're passed under the authority of the Planning Act, which means they have legislative authority. The Act also requires that all land use and infrastructure decisions made by municipal councils comply with the policies and designations in an official plan. So no decision can be made that conflicts with the official plan, and this impacts where development goes and how we supply infrastructure to it. A little bit about why the county is undertaking the development of a new official plan, and there are three primary reasons. First, the Planning Act requires that municipalities in Ontario review and update their official plans every 5 years. Second, it's been over 12 years since County Council adopted the first and current official plan, and a lot has changed during that time, including COVID and the COVID recovery, the housing crisis, and the growing climate crisis. Finally, the county also wants to ensure that there is enough land needed for new homes, business, and industry across the county, and an official plan review is the way to undertake that work and undertake that analysis. To undertake the development of the new plan, the county has embarked on a long journey that began actually in 2021 with identifying what issues the county wanted to tackle in developing the new plan. Phase 2 involved in-depth study of these issues and the preparation of a number of background reports that you can find online on Engage Elgin. These include reports such as the population projections and land needs analysis that were originally completed in 2022 and then subsequently that were updated in 2023 after the Power Corporation announcement in the city of St. Thomas. Phase 3 involved the drafting of new official plan and public and stakeholder commenting on the plan when the plan was revised and refined based on the feedback that was received. And that was through the fall of 2022 and into the winter of 2023. We're now in phase 4 of the plan's development, where we are finalizing the plan and preparing it for approval by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And one of these steps to approval is the statutory public meeting that we're holding tonight. At this point, I'd like to walk council and members of the public through some of the more significant changes that are being proposed in the new plan on a chapter-by-chapter basis to provide a backgrounder for the public submission portion of this meeting that will follow immediately. So with respect to the general changes that have taken place with the document, all the policies and designations were updated to comply with the current Planning Act and the most recent amendments to the Act, as well as the current provincial policy statement, which was last released in 2020, and all current provincial and national development guidelines. The existing community vision of the plan has been replaced with an approach built around 10 strategic directions that serve the basis of the plan. A general housekeeping of language and terminology was also conducted throughout the entire document. The approach to this housekeeping and editing was two-part. First, to improve the use of plain language to increase the accessibility and readability of the plan by the public, and also second, to reduce the overall length of the document by removing repetitive policies, redundant language, again, to increase the readability of the plan by the public. With respect to Chapter 1, the introduction, as I've mentioned, we've included a new overview this included a new overview of the county to provide context to the reader. This overview is largely based on the previous vision statement that was contained in the plan. We've included a new explanation of the Ontario planning system and the relationship between the county plan, local official plans, and the provincial policy statement to assist the reader in understanding how the planning system works and how each of those documents relates to each other. We've also included a new section outlining the structure of the plan and how it should be read and cross-referenced, again, to assist the readability and accessibility of the document. Chapter 2 is focused on growth management. The map that you're seeing before you constitutes the county's growth management strategy for the next 20 years, so up to 2044, and identifies all the settlement areas as well as the agricultural or rural area, along with strategic employment areas. You'll note that the existing tiering of the settlement areas that exist in the current plan, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 settlement areas still exist and is carried over into this plan, with Tier 1 settlements being settlements that have full municipal services, Tier 2 settlements being settlements that have either municipal water or municipal sewer, and Tier 3 settlements having neither municipal water or municipal sewer service. As I'd mentioned previously, in the development of the plan, we undertook an analysis of the county's growth rates, population projections, and also the amount of land that the local municipalities are going to need to accommodate population growth and employment growth over the planning horizon of the plan, which again is from 2024 to 2044. And I note that these figures were reviewed and updated in the fall of 2023 to reflect the new Power Corp or VW plant, that is facility that has been planned for St. Thomas. As we can see, the county is expected to stably grow throughout the planning horizon of the plan, increasing to around 62,000 people by the end of the planning period. With respect to land needs, and specifically residential land needs, all municipalities in the county have a substantial oversupply of residential and employment lands, with the exception of Elmer, which actually has a deficiency of about 21 hectares of land needed to grow. But overall, the county is amply supplied with urban lands to accommodate development over the planning horizon. So with respect to some of the detailed changes in Chapter 2, the schedules were updated to reflect the most current and up-to-date urban boundaries across the county, including those from the recently approved official plans like Southwold and Central Elgin. As I'd noted, we've maintained the hierarchy of settlement areas. That's a carryover from the existing official plan. We are only permitting expansions of urban boundaries for settlement areas on full municipal services. We've maintained the current approach to redesignation of rural lands and the expansion of settlement areas, which is primarily directed by the province of Ontario in the provincial policy statement. There's quite a little flexibility that the county or local municipalities have in the way that we consider redesignation of rural lands or expansions to settlement areas. And as such, those policies have largely remained the same. We've included a revised residential infilling and intensification target of 16% as opposed to the current 15%, and that reflects some of the assumptions that were made in the population projections and land needs analysis. And for clarification, the residential infilling and intensification target is where we expect over the next 20 years, approximately 16% of all residential growth that will occur in the county will occur in existing built-up areas of the county and not on greenfield sites. Moving on to Chapter 3 in economic development, we've restructured the economic development policies to focus on the county's three major economic priorities being industrial growth, agriculture, and tourism. We've identified employment areas that are of strategic importance to the county due to their size and location, along with policies to protect these areas, as well as county-wide important transportation corridors and facilities. We've renamed the existing tourism corridors to scenic routes to better reflect their role and included a policy to encourage high-quality development along these routes. And we've also expanded the community improvement plan policies by clarifying what types of programming the county may jointly fund in conjunction with a local municipality. Moving on to Chapter 4, which is solely focused on housing. This is a new section and is a consolidation of a number of existing policies to reflect its critical importance to the county. This is also an attempt to kind of congregate these policies in one chapter for ease of reading. We've developed a new requirement for a mix of housing typologies in new subdivisions, whereby a minimum of 30% of new dwellings must be another form of housing other than single detached dwellings. So this could include semi-detached, row houses, duplexes, or apartments. And under the conditions under which this requirement could be waived, we do recognize that not all new individual development applications may be able to meet that target. So there are opportunities to have that target waived in appropriate circumstances. We've also added new language around additional dwelling units to reflect some of the recent changes to the Planning Act and to make sure that the plan conforms to the legislative requirements of the Planning Act. And we've increased the plan's affordable housing target to 55% of new homes, as 55% of Elgin's population are classified as low and moderate income households. In other words, households that are in need of a designated affordable housing. Continuing on in Chapter 4, we've incorporated a new policy that requires local municipalities to incorporate policies into their plan to address the conversion of rental housing, introduce policies that encourage the county and municipalities to explore affordable housing development for surplus lands and facilities, introduce policies to encourage the creation of emergency shelters, transitional housing, and community housing, and the circumstances and contexts in which they should be permitted, and introduced a policy to encourage the coordination with higher levels of government to increase affordable housing supply in the county, and that can include partnering with higher levels of government on the delivery of social or affordable housing. Moving on to Chapter 5, which is the chapter that deals with the rural areas. So when going back to the growth management strategy, this chapter applies to all of the lands that we see in white on this map. So essentially all lands that are outside a designated Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 settlement area. In this chapter, we've reorganized and redrafted most of the policies to reflect the major changes that have occurred to the provincial policy statement since the original plan was approved. These policies allow a greater mix of uses in the agricultural areas, such as agriculturally related uses and on-farm diversified uses, agritourism uses, and they provide much wider permissions than were originally permitted in the last few versions of the PPS. So we've redrafted the policies of this plan to provide that greater flexibility and to make sure that we're maximizing the opportunities for diversification in the rural area and economic development opportunities in the rural area. We've introduced a policy to protect rural character, primarily as it relates to non-farm development in the small instances in which it would occur in the rural area. We've introduced a policy that encourages new development to mitigate against the effects of climate change and maintain the existing minimum lot size of 40 hectares for farm parcels as per provincial direction. We've also maintained prohibitions on residential lot creation and existing policies permitting surplus farm dwelling severances, as no substantive changes to provincial policy have been introduced since the original plan was adopted. So again, most of these are carryover from the existing plan, and that's because of the very strict provincial policies related to land division and residential lot creation in the rural areas. So we are meeting our minimum requirements under provincial policy and have not introduced any new requirements in that regard. Chapter 6 deals with the settlement areas. So again, these are the areas that are highlighted in this map as that purple and pinkish colors. And again, these are the areas that constitutes the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 settlement areas, or more commonly called the towns, villages, and hamlets across the county. In this section, we've clarified that all local official plans will be relied upon for most development policies in settlement areas, making sure that we're providing a wide discretion to local municipalities to develop and plan for their urban areas. We have introduced new policy to protect urban character in most of the county's towns and villages and to encourage the preservation of the small town character that we see across the county. We've established a new minimum net density of 20 units, residential units per net hectare in fully serviced settlement areas, and the instances in which this may be waived due to servicing or geography considerations. To give council a sense of what 20 residential units per net hectare looks like, that's essentially we would achieve that with a development that would be composed of lots of the size of 15 by 30 meters or 50 by 100 feet. So it's still I would not consider that to be a terribly dense type of urban development, but we are attempting to set a bare minimum of density in the urban areas to make sure that we're using land and resources and infrastructure efficiently. Chapter 7 focuses on the natural system. This is the land use schedule that you'll see accompanying this chapter. The green areas highlight the county's natural heritage system. And then we also have highly vulnerable aquifers and significant groundwater recharge areas that are also identified on these maps. The identification of highly vulnerable aquifers and the significant groundwater recharge areas, this is new within the official plan, as these were not identified in previous versions of the official plan. With respect to the policy changes of Chapter 7, the schedules, as I've noted, have now incorporated the Algon County Natural Heritage Study mapping and while maintaining the minimum compliance with provincial policy with regards to the protection of natural heritage areas. No changes were made to the levels of protection for natural heritage features or the features that are protected. So again, we're maintaining our minimum policy compliance with the provincial policy statement. We've clarified how new development proposals within the natural system will be evaluated to provide greater certainty for the development industry and the public. And we've expanded upon the watershed planning policies and introduced policies that encourage the development of watershed studies and require that watershed considerations be taken into account when conducting environmental impacts assessments, or statements, that is. We've also introduced a forest coverage target of approximately 30% of the county's land base by 2024. This is an ambitious target, but we've identified specific locations where we think we can help the county move towards that target, particularly on remnant parcels and remnant areas of developable land, and through the dedication of lands to conservation authorities and other conservation bodies in the development process. We've clarified the limits of the natural system designation are not precise, and we recognize that in some cases these features are dynamic. The classic example of this is wetlands, which can often expand or contract. And to that end, we do not require official plan amendments for the redesignation of these natural heritage features, recognizing that they are dynamic in nature. We've incorporated a new requirement for compensatory restoration when natural areas are destroyed through the development process. And that's for both when natural heritage areas are removed legally during a development process and also when they're removed illegally during the development process. And we've incorporated and clarified the requirements for hydrogeological assessments and cumulative groundwater impact assessments for subdivisions that are intended to be serviced by groundwater. And we've also incorporated a clarified requirement for geotechnical assessments for subdivisions on septic systems, again, to protect groundwater. Moving on to Chapter 8, Transportation and Infrastructure Systems. This is the land use schedule that accompanies this, and it highlights the transportation network throughout the county. And you can also see with the dash lines, the existing tourism corridors or the new scenic route designation that we've identified or renamed. And you can also see the I'll call them kind of the blobs, the golden and red and blue blobs. Those represent source water protection areas where drinking water, where there are drinking water sources or drinking water intake zones. In this chapter, we've incorporated new county road design standards arising from the county's draft transportation master plan. We've clarified and streamlined policies around how development that is not proposed on full municipal services is to both be justified and assessed. And again, most of this is not really new policy. It's just articulating the policy properly in the plan to, again, assist both the development community, the public, and councils in understanding how development should be, assessed, reviewed, and assessed. We've included source water protection mapping, as I've mentioned, in the land use schedules because these plans were not in place when the current and original plan was adopted. We've clarified setbacks from railways to reflect national guidelines that were not in place when the current plan was adopted. These were guidelines that were developed by the Railway Association and the Canadian Federation of Municipalities after the Lac Mégantic disaster. We've also introduced policies for development adjacent to linear infrastructure. Linear infrastructure is composed of things like hydro lines, pipelines, telephone lines, etc., to clarify how regulations of these respective operators will be incorporated into development proposals. And we've incorporated the noise exposure forecast and noise exposure projection contours around the City of St. Thomas Municipal Airport. These come from Transport Canada on the land use schedules, as these data layers are now exist. And so we wanted to illustrate them on the land use schedules. These layers are layers that prohibit certain types of sensitive land uses from being located within proximity to airports. And again, they're developed by Transport Canada, so they're a federal regulation, but we've now have them at least illustrated in the schedules for greater clarification. Moving on to Chapter 9, Natural Resource Management Areas. So these are areas of the county that are identified as having either aggregate or petroleum resource potential. You can see that a lot of this mapping is somewhat incomplete, and I've always found it quite strange that for some reason we don't seem to have much in the way of mapping for Southwold. We are hopeful that when the plan gets sent to the ministry, that the Ministry of Natural Resources may be able to provide some more updated mapping layers so we can more accurately reflect which areas of the county have aggregate or petroleum potential in them. With respect to the policies of the resource management areas, the natural resource management areas, we've clarified the language around when development is permitted in areas of natural resource potential. This is in accordance with provincial policy. Otherwise, the existing policies were reorganized and clarified, but not substantively altered. And one of the reasons for this is just the nature of the natural resource areas that we have in the county. They aren't as extensive as we might find in some other regions of the province, and we don't tend to really run into too many issues with these areas. Additionally, the Aggregate Resources Act also provides a really strong planning framework for how development of aggregate potential and petroleum potential gets approved. So there's not a huge need for a large policy framework. Moving on to Chapter 10, which is development hazards. This outlines all the lands that are regulated by conservation authorities, so floodplains and steep slopes. And we also identify the location of former landfill sites, and those are identified by dots across these maps. So this chapter of the official plan deals with both natural hazards, so again, floodplains and unstable ground and steep slopes, and also human-made hazards such as contaminated sites, former landfill sites, etc. In this chapter, as a result of Bill 23, we've developed a new policy to clarify how Conservation Authority regulations will be dealt with should the provincial government create regulations that exempt CA permitting when a Planning Act approval occurs. We've received some recent comments on even some of the most recent changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, and Council can expect some additional slight tweaking to some of the language to reflect the most current legislative references. We just received that correspondence from the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority just the other week, so we'll bring that back for Council for adoption. For consideration at the time of adoption. We've removed references to Conservation Authority shoreline management plans, as these plans will be implemented primarily by the respective conservation authorities and local municipalities. There's very minimal role that we could see that the county plays within a shoreline management plan, and as such, we removed the policies related to them. Otherwise, the existing policies, as I noted, were reorganized and clarified, but not substantively altered. And just I'm moving closer to the end. The last chapter of this is chapter 13, just in case anybody's wondering when I might be wrapping up. But moving on to chapter 11, this deals with cultural heritage. With respect to this chapter, we've clarified that the cultural heritage protection is primarily a local matter, but that archaeological protection is primarily a county matter due to its cross-jurisdictional nature. And so this is recognizing that when we talk about the designation of sites or buildings or landscapes or neighborhoods under the Ontario Heritage Act, this is not a function that the county or county council is going to be undertaking, but is something that's going to occur at the local level. Because of our relationship to as approval authority for plans of subdivision and land division and large scale development, and because archaeological sites can cross jurisdictions and municipalities, we have clarified again that archaeological protection is primarily a county matter, and that the policies are focused on archaeological protection. To that end, we've simplified the language around how to determine areas of archaeological potential using the province's simplified checklist process and the instances in which full archaeological assessments are required. So we're hoping we'll be able to really streamline this process for members of the development community going forward, and that won't require full archaeological assessments every time a development is proposed within the county. We've introduced new policies around Indigenous archaeological resources and requirements for engaging with Indigenous communities when we find archaeological resources related to any of those nations. And we've introduced policies around unexpected archaeological discoveries and protocols for addressing unexpected discoveries in the development process. And we've also introduced a policy that the county could create, and that is a discretionary authority, but could create an archaeological management plan to once again attempt to reduce the requirements for developers to complete archaeological assessments and bring greater clarity for members of the public, the local Indigenous population, and Indigenous nations, and the development industry as to when archaeological assessments are required. Going on to the second to the last chapters, chapter 12, this is with respect to the review of development applications. We've expanded the existing policies on how development applications are to be reviewed, but no substantive changes have been introduced. This is primarily a clarification, and once again is intended to provide greater clarity for the reader and for members of the development community and the public. We've introduced policies on when and how exempted condominiums and part lot control exemption applications will be considered and evaluated, clarified when severances may be applied for versus a plan of subdivision, expanded the list of studies that may be required to form a complete application, clarified that the county will determine who is a qualified professional to prepare any required studies or plans. We've expanded Indigenous consultation policies, including the creation of an engagement protocol to assist the county and local municipalities with our duty to consult with our Indigenous, with the local Indigenous nations. And overall, this again is once again primarily a reorganization and a clarification of existing policies. And moving on to the last chapter, implementation and administration, we've introduced policies to establish a Planning Act Advisory Committee as required by previous changes to the Planning Act, incorporated a new policy that requires annual reporting to County Council on achieving the goals and objectives of this plan. And once again, this was overall primarily a reorganization and a clarification of existing policies. And finally, I would like to touch base on a little bit around the next steps in this process for the benefit of council and also members of the public that are here this evening. As I previously noted, we're currently in the last phase of the plan's development, final review and adoption, which means we're in the final stages of gathering the input and feedback on the proposed plan before County Council adopts it and sends it to the province for approval. In terms of the immediate next steps, the draft official plan has been posted online for commenting since February 14th, and after today, that commenting period will end. This is when staff will then consolidate all the comments that have been received, and this includes both written comments that have been received prior to this date, and also oral comments and submissions that may be received this evening. We'll then consolidate all those comments and prepare a staff report outlining for County Council any of the final recommended changes to the plan. The finalized plan will then be brought to a regular council meeting for adoption before being sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for approval. And we anticipate the approval by the ministry to come within 3 to 4 months' time. So we are hopeful that we'll be able to bring the plan back to council for consideration sometime in April, if not at the very beginning of May, and likely by the end of the summer, we would be hopeful to have an approved plan at that time. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will pass the mic back to you, Mr. Warden, for the public portion of the open house, or pardon me, the public meeting.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your rendition and summary of the draft official plan. It's inclusive, and I'll give you that. We are now going to open up the floor to statements. We will first take statements from those joining us virtually over Zoom, and then we will take statements from those who have joined us in the council chambers. When making your statement, please state your name and your organization if you're representing any, if applicable. If you've not used Zoom before, you can indicate that you want to speak by clicking on the reactions button found at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then select raise your hand. Otherwise, just raise your hand and let me know what you wish to speak. We will not be accepting statements through the chat function on Zoom. So going to Zoom first. Anyone wishing to make a statement at this time, please. And I see, I'm sorry, I can't see the name up there. Can you? I'm sorry. Daria? Daria, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here this evening, and I won't speak for very long. We did submit written comments as well, so they will be part of the record as well. So my name is Daria Kaczynski, and I'm the Executive Director at Thames Talbot Land Trust. We are a registered charity, and we're dedicated to protecting natural and agricultural lands. We currently protect over 890 hectares across 25 nature reserves, and that we work in London, Middlesex, Elgin, Oxford, and Perth. The lands are also certified under Canada's Ecological Gifts Program and recognized as protected areas and counted towards Canada's goal of protecting 30% of terrestrial lands by 2030. In Elgin County, we protect 344 hectares, which is over 850 acres of land. And we do that through numerous mechanisms, including fee simple ownership or conservation easement agreements. So as major landowners in Elgin County, we have a strong interest in policies and procedures that are related to land use planning in Elgin County. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that Elgin County does have less than 24% natural cover, but we know that we need about 30% for healthy habitats, populations, and the provision of ecosystem services. The Elgin County Natural Heritage System study also found that many of the patches there's very few of those that are over 100 hectares in the county. So there's only 3.2% of those patches that meet those criteria across the county. So these statistics are suggesting that many of the habitat patches that we have across the county are small and less likely to support wildlife populations. Many species at-risk birds require large tracts of forest, for instance, or continuous grassland to support healthy populations, and loss of habitat is the primary threat leading to their decline. So expansion of habitat patches could support increased resilience and provide improved ecosystem services across the county. For that reason, we're really pleased to see that the new draft includes language to encourage and permit the expansion of natural habitats and natural heritage systems connectivity. So not just protecting the existing natural heritage features, but providing mechanisms to actually enlarge those. So the following sections are really exciting to us, and I hope that they will be part of the adopted version of the official plan. So section 7.15, increasing forest coverage. So the plan is targeting an increase in forest coverage to 30% by 2043. So we're really excited about those possibilities for the county. 7.16, expanding the county's protected land space. So we're really grateful that the county is recognizing collaborative approaches with organizations like land trusts, like us, and the use of mechanisms like conservation and stewardship easements to protect or expand protections for the natural system. 7.17, land division in the natural system. So focusing on keeping natural heritage lands together and supporting applications for the protection of the natural system by a public body, conservation organization, or a land trust. And 7.18, monitoring the health of the natural system. So developing metrics and an accountability plan to look at the progress of the plan's objectives. So these new sections facilitate the expansion of natural heritage lands in the county and promote collaborative approaches for land conservation. So we are hopeful that this new plan will provide opportunities to grow the natural heritage system and get Elgin County to the goal of 30% natural cover. Wetlands, forests, grasslands, and working farms provide ecosystem services for local communities, such as water filtration, flood reduction, carbon sequestration, improvements in air quality, pollination of food crops, and also recreational opportunities that are linked to the tourism goals. These habitats are also home to a diverse group of plants and animals, including many species at risk that call Elgin County home. So many other municipalities have included these types of provisions to expand natural heritage in their official plans, and we're really pleased to see that the County of Elgin has taken this initiative as well. Thank you for your commitment to nature and to land protection, and we're looking forward to watching this plan progress further.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else on Zoom wishing to speak? I believe that's Suzanne. Would you please state your name for the record? You're still muted.
Hi, it's Suzanne Slotzauer speaking from BAM.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I think this is Daria's comment is a great segue to my concern. I did submit a written component because there's a little bit of confusion with some mapping. Really under Chapter 7, the natural system, my concerns are with the lack of central repository online and interactive mapping tool available to display Elgin County's natural system, which are being defined as significant wetlands, significant coastal wetlands, significant woodlands, valley lands, areas of natural and scientific interest, significant wildlife habitat, fish habitat, habitat of threatened and endangered species, surface water and groundwater. And because the county is prioritizing the protection, enhancement, and rehabilitation of these natural systems and designating components of the county's heritage system as mapped on the Schedule C to be significant under the provincial policy, I think it would be to the benefit of all the stakeholders, property owners, developers, watershed planners, and the like, environmental land stewards, to have ease of access of information via a county level interactive online mapping tool. I noticed that Schedule C maps natural heritage features. I don't know what those features are. What are those protected features? That is not clarified in the mapping. It's shown as green, but it's obviously composed of woodlots and wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. And if we're on a mission to improve these systems, it would be good to have a baseline mapping available. Of course, static mapping included in the official plan, that's inevitable, but online tools are a dynamic system. Yes, I don't really agree with Mr. Hicks' statement about wetlands are dynamic and then therefore can't be mapped. I think wetlands are one of the significant things in which have land use policies that we can't develop around wetlands. And so they need to be mapped so people understand when there's a provincially significant wetland versus a regular wetland and where those policies and would apply. So that's what my recommendation is, to have these natural system components mapped and clearly defined in a central repository on an online tool. That would be something that I would think would be good. Under the natural system again, Chapter 7, I'm going to Go back to the development under partial services. I did get some calls from my comment the last time because they didn't think there was any development on partial services within Elgin County. There in BAM there is, and there's a potential based on 2019 developable land inventory completed by IBI for BAM. There's a potential development for over 1,050 lots within the settlement areas in Stratfordville and Eden. And I believe that's a significant enough number of potential wells that development by plans of subdivision on partial services shouldn't be approved in isolation of each other, and does warrant a cumulative impact study that assesses the viability of the aquifer under these development pressures and climate change. And I will add in the competing uses with agricultural uses to make sure that everybody is using the water in these aquifers. So section 7.13 does put forward a great policy, a requirement for a hydrological assessment and cumulative groundwater impact assessment for the development of for development serviced by groundwater. The policy, however, as currently written, provides a degree of flexibility. The county planner last week suggested the policy was written as a permissive provision to allow for a degree of flexibility when dealing with smaller development by consent applications. When I say development by consent, that's usually when there's less than 5 lots or its equivalent and proposed for development. I think the concern now lies under Ford's new bill is when we talk about a 33 lot single house dwelling development, there's actually the potential to have 2 additional units on each of those lots. So a 33 lot development could become a 99, which is a great burden onto our infrastructure, and including whether it be a private well in our aquifers or sewage capacity, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm thinking the permissive permission leaves the requirement to undertake these studies wide open to the discretion of personnel at the local level that may not be qualified to exercise this discretion effectively. So there's a broad interpretation of that policy. So to ensure integrity of the standards and prevent potential misuse, I would recommend amending the policy to replace may with shall, to mandate the cumulative groundwater impact study where development is greater than 4 lots or its equivalent. So I would propose that the provision under 7.13 be changed to read that the development that proposes to use groundwater as the drinking water source shall be required to demonstrate through hydrological assessment and cumulative groundwater impact assessment prior to any approval that there will be no negative impacts to groundwater quality and quantity for other uses that draw their drinking water from the same groundwater source. In the event that we do complete watershed and sub-watershed studies, which are coming forward through the environmental program, they're just not in, the guidelines aren't in place and they aren't regulated to occur at this time. And you know, then these types of policies can be laxed because they provide a baseline information from which people can start. Then under chapter 10, again, I'm leading more to a mapping concern. Chapter 10 is, as described by Mr. Hicks, the designated hazard lands, pretty much developed through the conservation authorities and mapped as regulated areas in Schedule D of the county's official plan. And considering the extent of the policy implications linked to these lands as detailed in Chapter 10, it's crucial to maintain up-to-date and uniform mapping across all jurisdictions and agencies. And so this is where, again, it comes important. A central repository and an accessible online interactive mapping tool can ensure regional mapping consistency and accuracy, provide a common baseline for all stakeholders. And my point in case, there is a mapping discrepancy with the regulated areas in the municipality of BAM. And this discrepancy should be addressed final to the prior and final approval of the official plan. This, and because it's starting as the baseline. I could explain what that discrepancy is, and I'm not sure if, I'm showing it with figures in my submission, but it essentially Elgin County and is showing the former regulated areas mapping. This mapping is the same as what you would see on the LPRCA website. However, through inquiries I personally made in 2022, I've noticed there was a discrepancy in the area where I live, which wasn't a regulated area and now is a regulated area. So that obviously, you know, why is there a change? And the Conservation Authority explained that they had updated their mapping. This new mapping was incorporated into BAM's zoning schedules during their 2022 housekeeping. So BAM has new mapping, and chapter 13 or 13.4 under the local zoning bylaws in the draft official plan requires that every local zoning bylaw shall be updated to the local municipalities to conform with the county's plan. Well, I don't think BAM wants to go backwards. They've already updated to the newest and most up-to-date hazard land mapping. So they would be in contravention of the official plan if they didn't update it to reflect that. So this is just a point in place that I would hope that having these things mapped in a central repository would help identify these discrepancies and help move you know, land stewards and developers moving forward, all having the same pieces of information. I would hope that the discrepancy within the BAM, and I can't make any statements for other municipalities because I didn't look at their mapping, but I hope this would be addressed, and I've sent in figures to hopefully clarify that to the members of council and try to get these discrepancies corrected before we finalize an official plan, and that would end my comments.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Suzanne. Anyone else online wishing to make some comments? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone step forward. To the gallery, does anyone here wish to make any comments on the official plan, the draft official plan, I should say? Please come forward, state your name, and proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Ward and members of council. My name is Ted Halwa. For the record, that's Halwa. It often gets misspelled. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a couple of submissions I would like to make this afternoon on the county plan, Mr. Warden, and I'll start with Curtis and Christine Hay. Curtis is available, as you can see, online if need be, and may participate through the submission. Curtis and Christine Hay are landowners out in the municipality of West Elgin. And one of their holdings is about 400 odd acres adjacent to and abutting the village of West Lorne. I don't know whether we can pull Schedule A up, Paul, but that might help if we can. And focus in on West Lorne, perhaps not. Marsh Line forms the southerly boundary of the settlement area of West Lorne. It runs more or less in an east-west direction. Graham Road comes up from the lake.
Put my videos on.
And the land that the Hayes are owners of is in the southwest quadrant of Marsh Line and Graham Road. In 2023, the Hayes sought and got the support of the council of the municipality of West Lorne for a minor boundary expansion to include lands on the south side of Marsh Line. On the north side of Marsh Line, the lands are already developed except for a portion at the west side, at the west end, which is the subject of a draft plan approved subdivision for many years and has been currently been reactivated. So on that stretch of Marsh Line, which abuts the boundary of West Lorne, it's on the north side, it's developed or about to be developed. The Hayes only lands on the south side, which is cultivated. The request made by the Hayes was for a minor boundary expansion to include the frontage along the south side of Marsh Line. And that was certainly well-founded on the basis that Marsh Line is a local township road. It's fully serviced, municipal water supply, sanitary sewage, natural gas, hydro. The expansion itself, modest in size, about 5 acres of developable land would comprise that strip or corridor. It was, this occurred in 2023 and became part of an updated official plan, which was submitted to the county for approval. Through the passage of time and monitoring the situation, the Hayes were led to believe or came of the understanding that the county, at least at the staff level, was receptive to this expansion and it would ultimately be approved. We find out, at least in attending the public meeting last week, that the boundaries shown for West Lorne on Schedule A to your plan, the county plan, does not include lands on the south side. And pursuing that, and not as quickly as I might have, but discovering today that the reason the lands were not included was because the discussions between the municipality and the county were still in a state of being incomplete. And so that plan was not yet approved and not yet brought to the floor here for approval. My concern is that if in approving the county plan or proceeding with the adoption of the county plan prior to this resolution of this issue is going to make it very challenging and cumbersome to include those lands subsequent to that into an approved status. It begs the question of whether a county official plan amendment will be required. And having just adopted the plan, that's usually discouraged to seek to amend a document shortly after it has been adopted and the ink is barely dry. To that end, even though there are sections in the county plan about interpretation of municipal boundaries, which gives some flexibility, and this is a minor, very minor extension, it doesn't perhaps fully address this, this particular instance. And it would be perhaps, certainly it would facilitate the ultimate approval of these lands if they are considered acceptable, and they are by the local municipality, then having to embark upon another approval process, and that being at the county level, no one really wants to amend a county official plan. It'd be akin to amending the Bible. It would be, it's a huge exercise, time-wise and potentially expenditure-wise. So I guess our submission would be then that although you're from the schedule that was presented during the formal part of the meeting today, that the plan might be coming back to County Council as early as April for adoption. And I would hope that, and I guess that we're asking for your indulgence, to perhaps to consider delaying that until these negotiations, which are currently ongoing between West Elgin and the county, to be concluded and this issue resolved, rather than have to deal with it after the fact and deal with the issues that would imply. there are at least three policies in the new county plan which establish benchmarks which potentially affect the development of the lands that we're discussing. And these were cited in the presentation on the plan by Paul. One is the 55% target, affordable housing target. Another is the 70% maximum for single detached dwellings in a development. And a third one is the 20 units per net residential hectare. And in two of these instances, the 70% max for single unit detached dwellings in any particular development and the density standard, there is some flexibility built into the policy itself. Just to give some recognition that in certain circumstances, it may not be prudent to insist on that standard that is prescribed. And the third one on the 55% target for affordable housing, that same flexibility or some flexibility is absent. And this is a request for council to in turn request staff to take a look at that policy with a view to adding some flexibility. So in the case of the Hayes or subsequent developers, you don't get into a situation where you can't meet that figure. And the question arises, well, do we have to amend the county plan to get through this obstacle? And I don't think you'd only do that, in the gravest of situations. So that would be my second submission on behalf of the Hayes, Mr. Warden. The other party I wish to speak to, I probably neglected to say I'm a retired, semi-retired land use planner by trade. And I'm a director of the Port Stanley Village Association, which is a community organization of about 600 members in the village of Port Stanley. And it has 7 pillars of which, or key areas of interest, which we monitor over time and speak to or endeavor to make suggestions and improvements and pass those on to higher levels of government where change might be desirable. And one in particular is on growth and urban character. And so we were quite delighted to see this new policy being introduced in the county plan on that topic. And it's really groundbreaking. It's really uncommon in my experience in county plans that such language, is present. And I think it's laudable and commendable that this has been done. I know you got the support of our association. I can speak for that as being a director on the board. I do, in thinking it through, it's probably going to be pretty challenging to make this work on a case-by-case basis. Certainly, it will be without pretty strong support from the lower tier municipality. And also, it begs the question of just how will it work? Would it be to the degree that if the county felt a particular development was not in keeping with the urban character or current character of the settlement, the county would intervene? As some of you may know, at the present time, we have 2 developments in Port Stanley. One is a 6-story apartment building under construction currently on East Road. Another is a proposed commercial development out on the highway near the very entrance to the village. These are both out of character at face value with the traditional character of the village. And we have intervened with the commercial development and met with the developer to discuss ways and means of ensuring that development, is sensitive and compatible with the established character of the village. But I wonder, with the introduction of this policy, just how the county will conduct itself when these proposals come forward and intervene to ensure its implementation. Mr. Warden, thank you for the time and for making those submissions.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else from the gallery?
Hi, my name's Ted Chick. Great name, Ted, isn't it? Anyway, I guess my question is, like, I'm a farmer and realtor, and we see, drive up and down the roads every day, and I see a lot of spots out in the country where you could put a house. And I know the zoning on those properties, a lot of them is A1, but it's either not being farmed or it's too small to farm. And I know there's the MDS that comes into play with them. Lots of times those places are already beside another house. And I know it's because it's zoned agricultural. You can't just put a house there or sever it, even if it's an infill. So to change that, in order for the county to change that, do you have to change? Does the province have to change that policy, or can you guys change it here?
Are you asking council of a question?
Paul.
Paul.
Yeah.
Paul would be the better one to ask.
Through you, Mr. Ward, to respond to that question. With respect to the creation of new residential lots, the severancing of surplus farm dwellings or land division itself in the agricultural area, that's all directed through the provincial policy statement. So the county policies, the proposed policies and the existing policies are maintaining our minimum policy requirements under provincial policy. So if an individual wanted to construct develop new residential lots in an agricultural area, that would require a change to the provincial policy statement, and it's not within county council or local council's ability to change that. That comes from cabinet directly at the provincial level. So in this case, and I just want to provide some clarification just to make sure that council understands and the public understands. In this case, while there are a number of prohibitions on land division and lot creation in the rural area and in the agricultural area, that prohibition comes directly from the province of Ontario. And we're required to enforce that provision in the official plan.
So if the province mandates that, will that get incorporated into the official plan or does it have to be updated?
So the province, through you, Mr. Warden, the province currently mandates that prohibition, and that those prohibitions are carried over into the official plan because the province mandates that we include them in the official plan.
So what if the province changes that?
So then if the province changes it, then through you, Mr. Warden, county council could consider a change to the policies in the plan through an amendment to the plan. They would have to, the county council would have to consider the changes and amend the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Ward and County Council for letting me speak. My name is Jim Crane, Malahide Township. And what I would like to speak about, I've been to a couple of conservative meetings, breakfasts and whatnot in the last 3 months, I guess 4 months. And listen regular to Doug Ford speak. And I used to be a strong old liberal, but not anymore. So just to clarify that. But anyways, Doug Ford certainly appears to be so much more flexible with if you're willing to make changes than Kathleen Wynne's government. They were very strong on this is what the province says, this is what the premier's office says. Doug Ford don't appear to operate that way, and I plan on sending him a letter and talking to him officially about it. But what I'm saying is, in our township, of Malahide, we have very, very few building spots that can be built on. Very, very few. There will be the odd one. But with this battery factory coming to St. Thomas the way it is, if it's true, how big it's going to be, I'm sure our township needs another, I don't know, 150, 200 lots. It could be a lot more than that. And we certainly don't have them at this time. And I guess building lots are half an acre, 100 by 200 with modern, with the weed bed systems you can put in today are more than adequate. I had a lot, used to have a lot, basically 100 by 150 with wheat and bed, built the house 56 years ago when I was just very young, obviously. And the same wheat and bed's still there. So these new style wheat and beds, if you leave a contingency area, you've got lots of room on a lot that size, and water in general. And if you don't have town water in Malahide Township, it's very easy to get. And so I'm in favor of these villages, say like Avon or even say a place like Springfield. You wouldn't have to go with that big a lot because you have sewage there. And even Port Bruce, they got town water, so you can certainly deviate from the size a little bit. But I think we're gonna have to cut loose and let these lots be developed in these areas. And just for example, in the last 2-3 months, there's 4 new lots developed in Crampton, right in the village. They're basically 100 by 200, give or take a few feet. I was to a township council meeting here, I don't know, 6 weeks ago down at Bayham, and there's two new lots actually being developed there. And I stood up and spoke on that, and I was highly complimented for supporting it. And you may remember that, Mr. Warden. And also, I guess it sounds like you're going to be doing a lot more development in your township and in your 2 villages where supposedly a lot of houses are going to be going in phases. And we don't seem to have that in our township. So I would like to see Malahide develop back off the rules and talk to the Premier's office a little more and see if we can make some changes in Malahide Township. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the gallery? State your name, please.
Andy Grizel with the town of Elmer. So I apologize to the gentleman who went before me because I have about just the exact opposite to say. No offense. So thank you, Mr. Warden. I wanted to come here today to thank Paul and Nicholas for going over the items raised with the town of Elmer last week. We really appreciated it and feel the majority of items that we raised have been addressed or are likely to be addressed in the report that comes forward. I would note that Paul wasn't directed to review the historic planning considerations or the delineations in Elgin County, and we would recommend that this be reviewed at some future time or in the next official plan review. At a high level, we believe it's really time for the county to begin signaling that we're going to hit a paradigm shift with how planning occurs in the county. Elgin County needs growth. There's an immediate and practical need for the county to ensure an adequate housing supply for the community. But there's also existing issues around affordability and competitiveness in respect to taxes. I won't go on about the county's taxation, but it's on the high end for county systems. And we get less services than are provided by many other counties. Elmer found itself in a very similar situation recently, where our population was too small for the service levels that we provided. So what we did was we invested heavily in growth to try to adjust that to make it that we could provide services on an affordable basis. And we see Elgin County as being in a very similar position of having little choice but to focus on growth to prevent potential negative outcomes in the future. Growth is not easy, though. The president of AMO spoke just today. He said that the infrastructure deficit for Ontario municipalities over the next decade is $250 billion. Growth accounts for $100 billion of that. So it is not easy to fund this, and the funding shortfall is clear, as is the pressure on lower tier municipalities right now to make unwise fiscal decisions to try to service communities that shouldn't be serviced. Just to meet provincial housing pledges. Economies of scale are important for water and wastewater projects to ensure that systems are affordable and that the initial construction and infrastructure renewals can be funded from the user base. So these are supposed to be user pay systems, and they should be sustainable both from construction and when renewals required. The reality is that creating new systems in remote areas is unlikely to be affordable and could create serious long-term issues for users or the municipalities. Utilization of existing systems with substantial user bases and established financial plans is really the most cost-effective approach going forward for the county. We understand the county cannot stop lower tier municipalities from making poor fiscal decisions. That's not within your role. But at the same time, the county does have a leadership role in guiding growth and directing it towards fully serviced urban settlements areas. And that's really what we're kind of asking is proposing to the county is the single best option before the county to meet the growth objectives, focusing on single tier Tier 1 urban settlement areas. A lot of my comments are not directly linked to the official plan that's before you today. We do see a need to go beyond the official plan to drive this paradigm shift for the county. To be successful, the county needs to view urban Tier 1 settlement areas as the heart of the county. Investing in urban Tier 1 settlement areas is good for the county, and that's the direction that the county should be going in. Any type of investment too in these areas is good. I heard today that the provincial budget just announced $5 million for rural transit opportunities. So there's new opportunities coming out, and certainly the county looking at creative ways to help out Tier 1 urban areas in growing will be really important to the next steps. Certainly, the urban areas have the ability to increase the assessment base, support local economic development. Urban areas are also better at meeting the fundamental planning objectives of creating integrated neighborhoods and communities with a mix of housing options that are close to amenities, encourage healthy lifestyles and community bonds. They're walkable, they reduce traffic and vehicle dependence. These developments also have the highest potential for intensification, so are the best way to meet your growth and population targets, while preserving farmland, cottages, and the historic land uses that are critical to the nature and character of Elgin County. So the best way to preserve the county is to invest in your Tier 1 urban areas. And I again appreciate your time, and I want to express my gratitude again to Nicholas and Paul. As I mentioned, most of our concerns have already been addressed. My appearance today is primarily to relay our perspective in Elmer and also to hopefully start an ongoing dialogue about where growth will go and how we can support all of our municipalities. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, is there anyone else? Not seeing any coming forward from the gallery. One last time around the virtual world, is there anyone who has any comments? You're not in a virtual world. But if you're in the gallery world, sure, come ahead.
I think it has to be remembered that the town of Elmer is a very small portion of our county for population. I think they're 8,000, 8,500. If I looked it up here just recently, I think Elgin County, with the exception of St. Thomas, of course, is around 51,000 people. So I don't think we should be doing everything for just Elmer because there's no place else literally much in the whole town or county that has those type of services like Elmer. So I think we got to look at the general public all the way through and what most keeps most people happy.
All right, thank you for your comments, and I believe that's always what council's objective has been, but thank you for that. Okay, is there one last call for any more participation in this public meeting? All right, I don't see any additional comments being offered. I want to thank everyone virtually as well as like those who attended virtually as well as those who attended the gallery this evening and for participating in this public meeting. It's important that you have opportunity to have your say in this this process. And we do look forward to having those comments incorporated into the draft coming back to us in the near future. So having said that, brings us to the adjournment. And I'll wait for Catherine, unless you would like me to do it. Okay.
Resolved that we do now adjourn at 6:14 PM.
Do we have a mover and seconder, please? Counselor Cookett will move, Counselor Tellier will second. All in favor? That is carried, and we are adjourned. Again, thank you for attending this evening.